Okay, First Peter chapter 3. So we finished the amazing section on submission, on slaves submitting to us, submitting to the government, us submitting to each other, slaves submitting to masters, wives submitting to husbands, husbands submitting to wives. And now we have the rest of First Peter chapter 3. So he starts off and he says, finally, all of you be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble, right? So no matter who you are, you should be like this. So if you're someone like some people get really hung up on how wives need to submit to husbands and other stuff like that. He's saying, whoever, all of you, whoever you are, if you're a slave, if you're a husband, if you're a wife, if you're just a guy named Fred, whatever you are, be of this, be on, if you're Christians, be like-minded. What does that mean? What's your translation say? So we're in First Peter chapter 3, verse 8.
Be tenderhearted.
Okay, what's the first thing? Finally, all of you be what? Of one mind, like on the same page. Like, do what you can to be on the same page, get along with other Christians. Like, and that sounds really good, like in a generic way. But what it really comes down to brass tacks is get along with the people in your church. Those are the Christians you're around most of the time, most consistently, month by month, week by week, and all that fun stuff. And that means you're willing to put up with things that you might not agree with. And you're also, you're willing to give. You're not going to be an argumentative person who just fights about everything. You're on the same page because we're supposed to be here for the gospel and to learn about Christ together and to grow. And if you've ever been in a church that's like broken apart, or a church that was just unhealthy and people fought all the time, they are not like-minded, right? They're not focused on the gospel. They're just focused on whatever dumb thing is occupying their minds, and it's like this thing, and it just causes fighting and a nasty spirit. They don't want to be there anymore. There's so much fighting and nastiness going on, and it's very demoralizing. It makes you feel terrible inside. It's not a happy place. So be like-minded is what Peter's saying. Be sympathetic. What's that mean? I know that's not a very deep question, but what's it mean, be sympathetic? What's he saying? Or your translation might have something. Okay, Peter?
Care about other people's problems, but also be like compassionate at the same time.
Okay. Yeah. Didn't yours say tender-hearted, Judy? Okay, yeah, it's getting at this idea of be nice. Have a heart.
It also says be courteous.
Yeah. Be sympathetic. I mean, all of these are like when my dad taught me how to mow a lawn, he taught me to make the rows overlap so you don't have this thin strip of grass that didn't get cut. All of these things, like-minded, sympathetic, love one another, they all overlap. They don't mean exactly the same thing, but they really shade into each other. So being like-minded means you're going to be sympathetic to other people, to other Christians, right? You're going to have sympathy for what they're going through, and you're going to give them space to mess up or to do, because you have a sympathy for what they're dealing with. And if you do that, you're going to have love for one another, which is the third thing. And if you do that, it means you're going to have to be compassionate. And what is being humble? The last one on verse 8 says, in the NIV says, be humble. What's that have to do with anything he's saying? Or your translation might have something different than humble, but it's probably getting at the same.
Humble is also the same.
The last one in verse 8. All right, time to look at Greek again.
This is a New King James.
Humble being kind of like sort of like gentle, not exalting yourself above others.
You must be looking at something. There's no way on earth it means courteous.
Chapter 3, verse 8.
Yeah.
Finally, all of you be of one mind, having compassion for one another.
Yeah.
Love as brothers, be tender-hearted, be courteous.
Yeah, it's what mine says.
It must be
just humble in spirit.
humble in spirit. Okay, well that's interesting. So what is it? So what is humble? Okay, let's do humble. Jesus. Yeah, it's like, so if you're or we can do courteous too, but it's like the idea of you. It's, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to look at, I don't know where they're getting courteous, because it's just not, that's just not what it means, like at all. Like I'm looking at the standard Greek dictionary, it's not what it means. So I'm missing something here somewhere.
Well,
Well, let's do humble. What is that? What's the point of humble? What's that have to do with any of this other stuff we're talking about?
you're not demanding any, demanding your own way all the time.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think the problem, Judy, is the manuscripts that the King James and the New King James are based on have a different word. That's why it's so different. The King James has humble. So does the Revised Standard. So does the New King James. So I think it's I don't know. I'm sorry, the courteous thing. I'm very sorry. So yeah, there's a difference in the Greek manuscripts. The New King James usually gives you courteous. So I don't know what to say. Yours is right. It's just the newer translations have a different Greek manuscript. That's why it's.
Courteous means not doing evil for evil.
Let's talk about humble. Well, what does being humble have to do with any of this stuff? Peter?
It means like, put others before yourself.
I guess what I'm getting at is if you're full of yourself, you're not gonna want to be sympathetic to other people because you think you're better than them. If you're not humble, you won't want to love one another and have patience because you think you're better than everyone else. You won't want to be compassionate because you're a self-righteous jerk. You know, if you're humble, you're going to recognize like we've all been there sort of thing. And so you're gonna have compassion for other people because you know your own failings too, right? You're not there like the Pharisee in Luke 18 where you're just really self-righteous because you think you're perfect and you just look down on everyone else's scum. Peter's saying, if we're living in this world that's not Christian, we need to be really different sort of people. We need to respect the government so we can be left alone to pursue the gospel and tell people we just want to be left alone. So we want to be good citizens. So we're left alone. We need to treat each other and submit to one another out of love. And then finally be like-minded, sympathetic. We need to like live out this Jesus thing in a real way. And like Sarla said, like that means we need to be humble, like Jesus was, like Jesus is. And if Marvin or anyone else online, you can jump in with a question or anything else. You don't have to wait for me to stop talking. Just interrupt. Just unmute and just let it go. It's okay.
The Webster's definition is pretty brief and pretty good.
For what?
Humble,
Yeah. What's it say?
not proud or haughty,
Yeah.
not arrogant or assertive, reflecting, expressing, or offering a spirit of deference or submission to others.
Isn't it almost like being meek?
Yeah. You're not full of yourself. It's the opposite of prideful. Yeah. So, and remember when he says this, when he says he's talking to the group, he's not talking to you just as a person. He's talking to the church, to the people, to the churches he's writing to. So he's talking to us as a group. So it's not just you yourself. He says we as a group of Christians, we need to be like this. And all these commands, they're all to a group. They're all plural.
Yeah.
Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing. Who does that sound like? Sounds like Jesus, right? Sounds like the Sermon on the Mount that we're going to get to soon, in a few weeks on our Sunday morning sermon thing. Repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. And then he quotes a psalm as like support. Like when I'm preaching and I say something, then I quote, put a passage on the screen or something so you can see, this is why I'm saying this. So Peter does the same thing. He says, for, and then there's the quote. Whoever would love life and see good days must keep their tongue from evil and their lips from deceitful speech. They must turn from evil and do good. They must seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those who do so. He wants us to act like we're Christians. And now we're going to get into the hard, I don't think we're going to get into the really hard part today, but he goes on and starts talking about what Jesus has done. Does anyone have any questions about what we chatted about so far? Thoughts, what ifs, no matter what it is? We can take our time, or we can just speed on through. Okay. He says, who is going to harm you if you're eager to do good? That's generally true. I mean, most people are going to leave you alone. Not everyone, but I mean, most people will leave you alone if you're minding your own business and just trying to be good Christian people. Most people are going to leave you alone. But even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. Do not fear the threats. Do not be frightened. But in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. I think in the King James, it has reverence Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. What does that mean? What is he saying in verse 15? What's it mean? Translate it.
Well, it might be a good time to share your testimony, your personal testimony.
Yeah, always be ready to tell people why you're a Christian. Always be ready to, don't hide your faith away. Let people know who you are. Let people know what you are. And if they ask you something related to your faith or your church or something, if they open the door any amount, be ready to give an answer for the hope that is within you. That's what Peter's saying. Yeah.
Don't use all the church words.
Yeah, like, can you explain what it means to be a Christian or why you have hope in Jesus without using, and can you explain it in actual English? That I did a sermon like 3 months ago where I went through that little Bible study booklet, like a 15-minute Bible study little pamphlet you can give to someone and go through with them. They're on the welcome table thing up there. That's a really good way to think about how to talk about the gospel. They're sitting up there. You can grab one, grab two, grab whatever you want. They're up there right now. Just be ready, be willing to, stick a foot through the door if they open it up enough to ask. And Peter's writing in a time when, the world doesn't like Christians, back in like when Eisenhower was president, it wasn't that way. A lot of people pretended to be Christians and it was an accepted cultural thing. But like I've said before, in 2025, we're rapidly going way back to what the New Testament was like, to where you're looked down on if you're a Christian. You're tempted to hide it away because it's not acceptable. It's not good. It just makes you strange. It makes people might maybe think you're a bigoted person or whatever the case is.
Sanctimonious, or we say one thing and live another. So that when they look at our witness, either way, they don't see any reason why they should be Christian.
So yeah, so let me say this. So like that's in verse 15. So Peter's assuming you're living as a Christian in a world that doesn't like Christians very much. Like the whole book, this whole letter, he's just assuming it. He keeps talking about how, if you do suffer, then it's okay. You'll be blessed in the midst of it, right? He keeps assuming that it's a possibility, like it's out there. But then he says, instead, hold Christ as Lord in your heart. And always be ready to give an answer if anyone asks you about the hope that's within you. So he's assuming Jesus is going to be like bursting out of you by the way you live your life. He's assuming you're reflecting Jesus. So no one's going to ask you about the hope that you have if you're not reflecting Jesus, right? Do you reflect the Republican Party? Like, is that your God? Is it easier to get into a discussion about politics with someone or about Jesus? Like you can say what you want, but what's really important to you is going to just come out in your life.
So I had interest. Well, I guess this happens fairly often over here, but the Mormon guys came last week or the week before, and I wasn't expecting them. I mean, oftentimes I'll see them walking up, and I'll have time to pray first or whatever. But I opened the door expecting it to be our neighbor because they walk with Scott and it was around that time or whatever. So anyway, and as soon as I opened the door, I thought, uh-oh, I didn't feel like I was ready. You know what I mean? Like to talk to him. Yeah. And we did start talking and I thought, oh no, Scott doesn't love it when I do this. And so I thought, I don't know what to do. But at the same time, it was really fun to talk about Jesus. But I felt like when I tried to say something, it's like they always had an answer. It's almost like they wanted to argue or debate. And I really, really suck at that. I'm so bad at that. And so I said, wait, I said, I'm going to pray. And then I thought, well, you're not supposed to pray in front of people. You're supposed to go in the closet or whatever. And I thought, well, if I'm doing the wrong thing, then I'm sorry, but I need to pray or these guys are going to chew me up because I'm not good at this argue back and forth stuff. And I did. And I prayed and I asked God to show us the truth and this kind of thing. And it was really good. And when it was done, especially the guy on the right, it just felt good. And then they were at peace too. And I thought, well, yeah, they're at peace because they think that now I'm going to be, see the error of all my ways and that their Book of Mormon is right or whatever. And I just thought, well, I don't know what to do to change their thinking. And I guess it's not up to me to do that anyway, because I asked God to show us what was true. And so I'm just going to have to trust that. And so where was I going with this? So I guess to say, when I opened the door, I wasn't ready. And I didn't have time to get ready because it wasn't something I expected. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But at the end of that, I felt almost kind of patronized, like, oh, this poor lady, she doesn't really know the truth like we do, which is the same feeling I felt when the Jehovah's Witness guys came last month or whenever that was. Like at the end, they wanted to pat my head. And like the guy said, you just keep reading your Bible. And I thought, and I told him, I said, I love my Bible. I'm going to keep learning and reading it and that kind of thing. But I don't know that they were hostile to me. They were just I just kind of felt a little bit patronized. But does it really matter how I feel? No, it doesn't matter how I feel. I'm just supposed to do what God says. So I like that part about being ready. I'd like to be more ready. But I don't know that means debating with the Mormon guys. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm not good at that.
Yeah. Judy, go ahead. Sorry.
DVD on that last week. I'll tell you if it's any good and give it to you.
Okay. I don't think a lot of people. There's a lot of there's some Christians who like their ministry is like engaging with cults or with non-Christians and trying to defend Christianity or tear down their false beliefs, and they take 1 Peter 3:15 and they use it as like their verse, like their mission statement. And no, I don't think that 1 Peter 3:15 means you need to be ready to debate everyone you speak to. I think he's talking to people who are just trying to live honest Christian lives in a really messed up world. That's who he's writing to. And he's saying, listen, as you're living your life, you might suffer for doing what's right, but you'll be blessed. Don't fear their threats. Don't be frightened. He says, just in your heart, make sure Christ is Lord in your heart all the time. Keep him there, like at the center of your life. And if someone asks you about the hope that you have, assuming that Jesus is flowing out of your life and that's what people see and not something else. And when someone asks you, just be prepared. Just be prepared to give an answer for why you hope in Jesus, and God will take care of convicting them or planting a seed in their heart. It doesn't mean you don't need to study to maybe be better for the next time they come, but I don't think you need to. You don't need to be ready to engage in a 2-hour debate on your front porch or something. I think what you did is perfectly fine, and I don't think you need to feel bad. I think most people would just hide in their house and not answer the door. So.
I had liked being able to tell them how much I love Jesus. And even if they thought that I was, a dimwit or whatever, it doesn't matter. It really did give me joy to be able to talk about Jesus and how good he's been to me. But I would prefer when people come to the porch, they don't think I'm stupid, but some days are like that, I guess.
No, you're probably right that they were patronizing you. I think you're right. I mean, the way you assume like, oh, it's okay. You just keep reading your Bible and you'll find the truth sort of vibe. You're probably right. And it's,
it's okay. It's all right.
Is anyone else gonna say anything?
She may have planted seeds, she's not aware she planted.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's yeah, as long as we're willing to stick our nose or stick our foot through the door, if we have an opportunity and we say what we can, I think God is going to be happy, because God's the one that has to open their hearts so they can receive the word. Maybe someone's going to get converted by a 2-hour long argument on a front porch, but I think it's more of it might be a link in a long chain that God's going to use. I don't think most of the times, I don't think someone's going to get converted from an argument on a porch. Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, it says to give a defense to everyone who asked you, not make an offense to everyone you approach.
Yeah,
And whatever your religion or world belief or worldview is, the worst thing you can do is try to cram it down somebody's throat.
Sure.
But you're not supposed to tackle them and put your foot on their neck and say, you become a Christian or I won't let you out, you won't breathe.
Christian attitude towards politics either. That we're supposed to be gentle witnesses, not.
and yeah, so that goes on with the next thing he says, like in the end of verse 15, he says, but do this with gentleness and respect. Gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience, so that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ may be ashamed of their slander. For it is better, if it's God's will, to suffer for doing good than for doing evil. So he does not want us, he does not want us to be jerks for Christ. Like, that's not going to attract anyone to any. It also doesn't mean we need to be total wimps. But Peter's saying, be respectful, be gentle, be firm, but be gentle, be respectful, be ready to give an answer, be ready to give a defense, but to do it in a God-honoring way. And that's what Peter wants us to do. That's what Peter wants us to be ready to do. And that's something that way too many Christians give off an attitude to where someone is going to ask them about something. It won't be the hope that's within them. It'll be about something else, because they're not giving off a vibe of, I have this great hope about Jesus within me, this joy, this peace. A lot of Christians aren't giving off joy and peace. They're very angry at what's happening to our country. They're very triumphant because of what's happening with our country now. Or it's just it's not Christ. It's other stuff with Christ sort of sprinkled in like sugar, but not really the main thing. And Peter assumes that Christ is what's flowing out of you. And it's Christ that people are going to want to know about when they look at your life. And we really have to make sure that Christ is at the center of our life. And then if someone is going to ask us about the big thing in our life, that they're going to ask us about Christ and not whatever else. You know, what is the big thing in our life that people see?